Hey, everybody. Today we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of my students struggle with, and that's test anxiety. So thank you so much for clicking on this video, and I hope you enjoy. All right. So first thing I want to say is, hey, my mission for doing these videos, and it's been awesome. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to teach you online, but it's really to educate you, it's to encourage you, and it's to enlighten you. And I just truly hope that these videos are educational to you and that it actually absolutely positively changes your life. All right. So we're now in week 4 out of 5 weeks of study skills. And during this week, we're going to talk about test anxiety. But as I started doing research on test anxiety, I was like, wow, this is actually a lot. So I've actually split it up into 2 different videos. So you're now watching the first video, and we're going to focus on where does test anxiety even come from? And then there's also another part that's very quick where I give you 5 practical tips on how you can overcome test anxiety when you're taking a test. All right. So please make sure you watch that as well. Let me go ahead and define for you anxiety first. When I think of anxiety, I really think of internalized stress. So whenever people say like, hey, I'm stressed out, you're really stressed in, right? Because at the end of the day, anxiety is stress, but it's where we internalize it over and over again, and we don't get help, and we don't talk to people about it. We don't process it with anyone else, and it just leads to just anxiety. So keep that in mind. And today we're going to talk about 5 different areas as we discuss where does anxiety come from. Number 1, we're going to talk about how part of it comes from our past. Number 2, we're going to talk about understanding worry. We're going to talk about our thoughts. We're going to talk about our need for control. And then finally, we're going to talk about comparison. All right, so here we go. So where does test anxiety come from? So I did a lot of research here, and I first wanted to start off and share that a lot of our anxiety comes from our past, actually. So here's an illustration that I'm going to give to you in a moment. But the first thing I want you to do as you're listening to this video is begin reflecting on your past. Understand why you're anxious. We're all anxious, but understand why you're anxious. And think about how it's usually more than a test. So a lot of the times, and you see that a student is anxious over a test score or doing well on a test. But so many times, that's just the surface level. So that's like the plant here in this illustration. However, there's deeper roots that really bring out this test anxiety that we see. So usually those roots, if you really think about it, is why do you want to do well? Well, what's your motivation and where's the pressure coming from? Right? Because so many students say, well, I just want to do well. I just want to do well. But a lot of times from what I've found after talking to hundreds of students is there's actually many other reasons in addition to yourself as to who's putting the pressure on you. Maybe it's the future, maybe it's society, maybe it's your parents. But really, like the first thing you should do for yourself is to think about where does it come from for you. Number 2, let's talk about worrying, right? So we all worry about stuff, but you've got to realize that worrying doesn't help. If anything, worrying just adds and exaggerates the problem. Any single time like you're worried about a test, you're worried about an outcome. A lot of times that worry, it doesn't really help. Instead, it just, once again, exaggerates. So think about that. And worrying something that we were kind of taught, like we were like we kind of have to learn. So I would say the first step is practice how to unlearn it. Are you going to do that overnight? Absolutely not. But over the years, for me, I've practiced and to kind of unlearn how to worry. So that's something to think about. Do I still worry? Yes, but not to the effect that I did when I was a student. Because now, I've gone through trial after trial, and I've always, lowered my worrying. Okay. So most of the time, if you think about it, we worry about things that we can't change, right? We worry about things that are out of our control. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because think about it. If you worry about something that's out of your control, that's in the hands of someone else, then it's a lose-lose, right? So at the end of the day, like you can't win that battle at all. Next, worrying will lead to anxiety, and anxiety will lead to that poor performance. So this is where, like, once again, most people don't talk about the roots of where does test anxiety come from. They just try to overcome it. They just try to solve the problem. But in reality, if you really want to solve the problem, you've got to look at your past and you've got to understand yourself a little bit more better. Let's talk about our thoughts. So your thoughts are so powerful. So here's a great quote that I love. Your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your character, and then destiny. So if you watch any of my videos, then you've seen this quote most likely at some point. Now, what I have to say is, think about it. Has anyone ever told you that you can't do something? And let's be real, they probably even forgot that they even told you that. They just said it in the moment. Oh, I bet you can't go to this college. Oh, I bet you like you can't get an A in this class. And so many times like we're trying to prove them wrong and we're trying to think. But in reality, those thoughts, those words actually affect us way more than we think. So when you look at where test anxiety comes from, a lot of them comes from things that were said about you that aren't even true. All right. So keep that in mind. Now, it's really important, and as you grow up, to guard your mind from mind pollution, right? So here's a practice that I do myself. Every single time I hear something, every single time that someone says something to me, I always think, is it true? Is it good? Is it right? Is it pure? Is it beautiful? Is it excellent? Is it respected? Is it worthy of honor? Because here's the thing, people can say whatever they want, but in reality, if we don't filter those thoughts, if we don't filter those words that are coming in, oh man, they could affect you for years to come. All right. So we're talking about, where does test anxiety come from? Another place where it comes from is our need for control. And whether or not you want to admit it or not, we all want control. We want to control our lives. We want to make sure that it's balanced. Like we want to make sure that we do the best that we can. But in reality, you can't control everything. And that's just something to think about when you try to solve your test anxiety, right? If you're trying to control everything, it's not going to happen. There's almost no way. Control actually brings more stress and more anxiety to you. Tests, let's be real, they can be unpredictable. You can study all you want, but at the end of the day, when your professor or teacher asks something, then once again, it's super unpredictable. And you kind of have to understand the big picture, because so many times we want to control the little things, but in reality, we can't. And we lose track of the big picture. All right. So remember, one test will not change your life. It doesn't matter what test it is. It doesn't matter when you take it. It doesn't matter how many chances you have. It just won't. Think about it. We don't even remember most of our tests that we take. But in the moment, it seems so big, because it's like, wow, I'm on the borderline of this grade and I really want to do well in this class. And then all of a sudden I failed this test. But in reality, let's be real, that one test will not change your life. You've got to keep your mind on the big picture. If anything, our failures give us the opportunity to grow, not just in academics, but also in our character. All right. And then let's talk about this last one, comparison. So where does test anxiety come from? Well, we're going to talk about comparison. But before we talk about comparison, let's first talk about a word called contentment, right? If we all want to be happy, we all want to be content. But when you look at the root of contentment, contentment truly is satisfaction. Contentment truly is enjoying what you have versus wanting more. And that's super important for you to understand at a young age, because so many things are going to come at us in life. But if you aren't content, if you don't enjoy what you have, and if you always want more, you're just going to lose that pretty quickly. Now, contentment is actually independent from your circumstances. So it doesn't matter what's happening in your life. If you're content, you're content. So we want to be content. But what's the number one way to ruin that, to ruin your contentment in life? That's comparison. See, comparison can rob you of all your joy. It can rob you from enjoying what you have. So let's talk about comparison. This whole idea of running your own race, we've heard of it before, but let me talk a little bit deeper on it and what it means to me. So I was helping a student recently really try to get to the A- mark and on their test. And, it took a few times, I think 2 or 3 tests, for them to actually reach the A-. And once they got it, I'm telling you, it was awesome. It was awesome to celebrate with them. It was awesome that they finally reached one of their goals, to finally get an A- on a test. But then what they told me the next day is that they talked to their friend and they figured out that their friend got an A+. And I'm telling you, to see the students in contentment go away was just really sad, because they shouldn't have compared, but they did. And when you compare, that actually steals so much of your joy away from you. See, when we compare ourselves, we always lose. So you got to be really careful when it comes to that. Now, why is it foolish to compare? So here's another reason. Because when you compare and someone's better than you, then you're going to be discouraged. And how many times has that happened for all of us? right? There's always going to be someone that's better than you out there. When you compare yourself and you're better than someone, so many times like you think, oh, well, that's great then if I'm better than everyone around me. But let's be real, it leads to pride. And that's equally as bad. So keep that in mind as well. So comparison can lead to jealousy, and jealousy can lead to anxiety, and anxiety can lead to envy, right? Which is, once again, somewhere that we don't want to be. If you've enjoyed this video, if it's helped, because I've never really made a video like this to kind of unpack why and where test anxiety comes from. But our next video is so much more practical. 5 practical tips to overcome your anxiety on test day. All right. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.